Simply Tammy.
It's a blessing that I'm here, I'm alive. No, I never ever have to cry, cause it's something I know will always work for me on my side. Not a thing I even have to fight, All things work together for my good. Life speaks if you listen, it might be sound. Watch the love come alive. Sharing the truth that inspires, Sharing the truth that inspires, Sharing the truth that inspires. All things work together for my good. Life speaks if you listen, it might be sound. Watch the joy come alive, watch the joy come alive. Sharing the truth that inspires.
Inspired to love, inspired to grow, inspired to heal, inspired to live. Simply Tammy.
Hello, welcome back to the Simply Tammy Show. I'm your host, Simply Tammy, and thank you for joining us again for another episode. This segment is another Life Speak segment where we get to celebrate the goodness of God, His divine providence in the life of some people that are here in the upstate of South Carolina. I have someone with me this evening that I've known for several years. We actually went to school together at one point. They are pivotal in this community through business, through other endeavors that they've had in the community, including law enforcement and now in the ministry segment. So help me welcome to the Simply Tammy Show, Derrick Pendergrass. Hello, sir.
Thank you. Hey.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am good. So thank you for saying yes.
Yes.
I know life is busy for many of us that have many things that we do and juggle many things. So I don't take it for granted when someone says yes and shows up. So I appreciate you for doing that.
You're welcome.
So we're going to jump right in.
Let's go.
So you recently retired from a over 25 year career in law enforcement. So how did that begin for you? Did you choose law enforcement or did it choose you?
Oh, wow. So I always had an interest in law enforcement. As a teenager, I did a little bit of exploring through the Boy Scouts of America. There was a program with the sheriff's office that I participated in that for a couple years while we were there at Southside. So even when I was in high school, I already kind of had an idea, which that gave me a real good inside look of what the job was about, some of the expectations. I always felt like it was a calling.
Okay.
So wasn't necessarily a popular calling.
Absolutely. I understand.
So it wasn't like I had a lot of friends that I grew up around that were all aspiring to go into law enforcement or anything. It was nothing like that. But there was always a desire to try to make a difference and do it differently.
Okay.
I had an encounter as a teenager with a law enforcement officer where it almost put a bad taste in my mouth.
So the encounter, was it they were helping you get out of something? Or you
No.
Okay. I just want
It was a situation where I was profiled.
Okay.
Pulled over for no reason.
Wow. Okay.
Young black male.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not to try and make it racial, but it was what it was.
It was what it was, absolutely.
And kind of personally felt the need to try and have a presence and do it differently. So that kind of was a motivation in it as well.
Yeah. So being in it as long as you were, and you were in it while there were some pivotal things happening in our country with law enforcement. How did that impact you personally? And then, well, I'll start there. How did a lot of the things that we saw going on in our country and people being anti-police at one time to a very high degree, how did that impact you?
I think still. especially probably more so now than ever.
Wow.
I definitely watched the profession evolve.
Okay.
The opinion and respect. There was a major shift. You know, when I started out, it was a respectable career. You know, it was something that people would commend you for doing, to the point of almost feeling like you were public enemy number one. With that being said, what it did to me, because you would hear individuals that might have an agenda, that were pushing a narrative that I was seeing from an inside view and perspective. And it's just like anytime you have a group, you can have a few bad apples and everyone, the entire group would be stereotyped. I knew that there were some good people in the profession, as well as I know that there are some bad apples. So something that I was personally once proud of, there was a shift to where you just like, ugh.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of different things that happened that could put a bad taste in your mouth. It was like a multifaceted battle, because you're dealing with the outside and the inside. Because still, you're dealing with the internal politics. You're dealing with the external conflict of trying to have that with the community, and it's just, it was all clashing. So it was a lot going on with that.
Yeah. And then personally, you're an African American male and you're a father. So
All of that was clashing. I mean, it was like almost like a catastrophic collision, all coming into one. So
Okay.
it was tough. I'll say that, for many years.
Did you find yourself having to have talks with your sons or other young men?
A lot. Yes, definitely. Even seeing it from a perspective where dealing with other young men, whether it's African American males or female, or just the conflict of dealing with different races. If you are dealing with some young man that might already have preconceived thoughts about law enforcement, and they're expecting a negative encounter, well, that's affecting their attitude automatically as well. So the importance of us being able to come together on a level where we could meet to get what we need to get done,
Right.
and be able to part ways. So even with my son, trying to put emphasis on the fact of trying to always put himself in other people's shoes as well. You had officers that were overly aggressive. You had some that were afraid. You have some that, you know, and you never know who you're going to be dealing with.
Right.
So from a father perspective, and even dealing with my son and my daughters, just always speaking to them about the importance of being respectful, trying to be considerate of what you have to do to make sure you get home.
Absolutely.
So that there's not any confusion or stereotype or whatever we need to do to navigate and just get along.
Right.
And not just here, but wherever he went,
Right.
traveling and all. So.
Right. So, at some point along your journey, you also launched a business, Peace Be Still.
Right.
What was the motivation for that, and what do you do in that facet?
Wanting to help and empower individuals to be able to not only protect themselves, but be able to do it the right way legally, and being proficient and safe. Mostly it's dealing with firearm safety. It's kind of morphed and went off in another direction, dealing with a little bit of doing some consultation, especially for security, and especially in churches, dealing with some churches that have helped trying to get safety teams and different things together.
Okay.
And kind of help them being able to protect those houses of worship as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, being a pastor, trying to do it in a manner where you can still conduct kingdom business,
Right.
without it being a distraction,
Right.
and still being safe.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So you offer consultations. Do you, I think at one time, didn't you do concealed weapon
Yes,
classes?
and I'm about to start back up with that. So doing the concealed weapons portion of it for certification. Now, I was really trying to wait and see what was going on because, you know, with legislation that's changed recently. Now with the open carry, how that was going to impact the program as far as with that. But they're continuing on with that because of the reciprocity with other states and to make sure you have the permit. So
Okay. So if someone was interested in finding out about the classes, do you have social media presence for Peace Be Still or
yes,
website?
we're still on Facebook. When COVID hit, I had kind of paused right at that moment, stopped, and of course, I also had things going on personally that life was lifing.
Life was lifing, okay.
So I paused with Peace Be Still for a minute to try and get things handled, and then just trying to see how things were going to work out in the pandemic because I didn't want to bring people together and assemble in a group and potentially expose people until we saw how things were going to kind of pan out. So I paused for a minute, but now we are picking back up and going. But I never stopped with the social media presence and all that was still there. Still have the same numbers, contact, and all that stuff still in place. So.
Okay. And your Facebook page, is it just the name of the business?
It's under Peace Be Still.
Okay. We'll put that up on the screen so that people can follow that if they choose to.
Gotcha.
Hey, just for a moment, I wanted to interrupt you. So no, the video has not messed up. This is an intentional interruption. Just for me first to say thank you, because if you've gotten to this point, that means you're still watching this interview and hopefully you're hearing some things that are helping you, encouraging you, inspiring you. But I thank you for taking the time to listen, to get to know some of these amazing people, and to be encouraged and inspired by their stories. Second of all, I want to give you an opportunity to partner with me. If there is something that you think you can offer to this platform, either hands-on if you're local to the Greenville area, if you know some guests that you think I should interview, or if you see the transitions that we've gone through from when I started with Women Who Win and now doing this in my own space, and you say, I want to support that vision, I want to give to it, we welcome any type of support that you have to give. We also are going to have opportunities for organizations and businesses. You don't have to be local to Greenville, but we can spotlight you during our show segments. If any of that sounds interesting to you and you want to participate, shoot me an email. I'm going to put the email address on the screen, and I want to give you all of the information on how you can partner and connect so that we can keep bringing these people before you, sharing their amazing stories, offering them a safe space to share their journeys, and to also help encourage you along yours. So thank you again for listening, and now back to this interview. So outside of your professional life, we look at some of your personal journey. At some point in your journey, you experienced the unfortunate, untimely death of your wife, so you became a widow and pretty much a single father for a period of time.
Yes.
What was that transition like for you? We often get to hear the woman's perspective of being a widow. What was it like from a male perspective and being suddenly a single father?
I had the support of a village.
Okay.
My mother, also my mother-in-law, mother-in-love. She's always been a ever-present help.
Yes.
She's always been there.
Yes.
So with the village support, there was a lot of changes and transitions there because I went from losing my wife to trying to juggle with that. I had my daughter, which was from a previous relationship, actually, when I was in high school. She was actually staying with me a good bit at that time. So really, I was dealing with both of them a good bit at that time. The original portion was trying to make sure that emotionally and spiritually I stayed grounded for the sake of the children.
Okay.
course, working, trying to maintain financially, keeping everything going. It required me, because in law enforcement, wasn't the highest paying salary, of course. So, of course, there was a lot of additional side duties and extra work that I was doing on the side, trying to maintain, keep the household up as well, make sure they had everything they needed, and all from there. From that side of it, it was tough because I felt like I missed a lot. When I really felt like I wanted to be there, so there were a lot of, let's say, trips, vacations, and things that I wanted to do, whether the family was going, I'd send the kids. But I had to stay and work.
Right.
Trying to make sure they were good and make sure it was straight. And that was one of the things that really hit it home for me at my retirement. My son spoke on that. And it just really took me back.
He spoke on how much you work, or the fact that
the sacrifice.
He made sure,
And, you know, he knew what was going on.
Yeah.
And there was times he wanted me to be there. And it almost gave me a sense of guilt, but I knew it was necessary.
Right.
And sometimes we don't always make the best decisions. We try and do what seems right in the moment.
Absolutely.
So I felt the need to try and push on through the career and do what I had to do to try and make ends meet and do it legally.
Absolutely. Not explore other options.
Right. So it was just,
yeah.
I felt like that was what I was supposed to do as a man in that moment.
Yeah.
But I'd also, looking back and reflect on it now, think about how much I really missed in that time. I think some of that was also, I buried myself sometimes in work to deal with
the grief.
The grief aspect of it.
I was going to ask you that. Was that one way of coping for you?
I think it was a way of coping. As long as I stayed busy, I didn't have to focus and think about it.
Yeah.
And so it was always go, 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 do.
Yeah.
It became any specialized assignment I volunteered for.
Wow.
You know, I ended up, it was so crazy. I was doing like hostage negotiations with the SWAT team. I was in the air support unit. I was always on call.
Wow.
And so that was another thing that really had me unavailable in some areas where I needed to be, because I always made myself available
In
for
areas
the
that you didn't
career
have to be.
where I didn't have to be. So,
Yeah.
but that was hindsight.
Absolutely. And at least now you have the wisdom to look at that and know that
definitely.
those were the decisions that were made and could have been differently, and not just saying, you know, that's what I did and I felt, you know, because some people even look back at their bad decisions and won't call them bad. So
Now, this is true. I mean, it was rewarding in some aspects, and it exposed me. I got some experiences and things and that's the beauty of, and okay, this is where the preacher comes out.
Come on, preacher.
The beauty even in our failures and our mistakes, how God truly uses all things to work together for our good.
Yes,
He gives us experience and benefits even in our mistakes and our mess.
Yes.
Sometimes, and it helps out, and still use it to fulfill purpose. And so I'm just amazed and awe sometimes.
Absolutely. I love it. So since you brought the preacher to the table, let's talk about that. I think I remember seeing on social media when you became a pastor, and DP, has that call to ministry always been there, or like when did you realize that was an area that you were supposed to be standing in, and how did you transition into it, having primarily and solely been in law enforcement, correct?
And it was a clash, when I tell you. So, going into the call, I wrestled, I ran, I fought.
Somersaulted, tried to jump off cliffs,
did everything to try to avoid it. And the confirmation one, it came for me. I had actually, it started with a dream.
Okay.
And in the course of the dream, I actually could see myself in the vision doing a sermon.
Okay.
And in the course of the sermon, I remembered all of the content, which was odd in the first place. Mm-hmm. So I had the conversation with my mother. She was the only person in the world I'd ever talked to about this. Mm-hmm. There was another young lady that I was dating around that time that I went to visit church with her. And the pastor that was there had a prophetic gift. Mm-hmm. And he paused and started speaking to me.
Directly to you?
Directly to me.
Okay. Okay.
And the part that floored me, because I knew the only person that I talked to was my mother. Mm-hmm. As he began to speak, he was very specific. Mm-hmm. Even got into some of the content of the dream and what was in there. And a lot of things that I had questions about, he was able to speak it and give it to me and confirm a good bit of it.
Okay.
And it shook me. It shook me bad. It was so accurate that it really shook me. And there was a lot of things that I had really been battling with personally that even in the fight and having a conversation with my pastor and some things that even went on, even that occurred during the time when my first wife was really going through with her illness. Mm-hmm. And just conversations that came back from my father in the ministry that, in counsel with him. And I knew when the time was there. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to be very transparent. At the time when it happened, I remember I went to Bike Week with a friend of mine. And we were at Bike Week.
Come on, Jonah.
And very close friend of mine. And we had a blast.
Don't
get me wrong. In my mindset in that time, we were just down there calling ourselves having a good time. Okay. And while we were down there and we were coming on back, I said, boy, this is it. I can't do this no more. And so my friend that I went with, he still joked with me. He was like, man, we had such a good time. This boy came back and he had to go into the ministry. But
so you left it all
I
in
said,
Bike
boy,
Week.
I'm done. I'm done. So realistically, when the time was coming near, I sat down with my pastor and he helped me with a good bit of that. Okay. So that late Reverend Sanders, Dr. Sanders, he helped this boy out because I was struggling. Put some of the pieces together.
Wow. And 6 years has it been in the pastor?
As pastor? Mm-hmm. I actually went into the ministry back in 2016.
So that's when you first got
licensed?
Okay, so that's been 8 years, right? Yeah. This year will be 8 years.
No, let me take that back. It was 2006 when I actually went in.
So we're talking 18.
2016 was when I actually started.
So you've been a licensed minister since 2006? Uh-huh. Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay. 18 years.
Remind me.
And what, we just 18 now?
Seems like it. Seems like it. Yeah.
It's been a long time. Okay. And then, so when did you started pastoring?
2016.
2016, so 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm. This will be my 8th year.
Okay.
Coming.
So when you originally got the call to ministry, did you feel that it was a pastoral call, or did you?
No. No, ma'am. I did not. And it's funny that you asked about that. I was not even applying to be a pastor.
Okay.
I didn't apply at my church.
Okay.
Did not. The pastor from Community Grove had passed.
Okay.
The church had been without a pastor for a couple years. And they were in the search, trying to settle down, body without a head, trying to bring it back together after, even allowing that church family time to grieve and get to that point. I was working full-time in Malden. I was down there running K9, doing everything, volunteering, crazy assignments.
Sign me up.
Right.
Sign me up.
I'll go. So, with that, there was another pastor I had preached at his church a couple times, and he was connected to some individuals there at the family by word of mouth. And he would have me to come to his church to preach, like if he was going on vacation. He was like, hey, man, can you come fill in? I'm going to be out this Sunday. And through his recommendation and by word of mouth, he said, I might know somebody. It might be a good fit. He said, let me check. So he reached out to my pastor. It was funny. My phone, I was at work. I'll never forget. I was standing out in front of the police department, and I was getting multiple calls, one from the pastor recommending me, and then from my pastor, the pastor at Pilgrim Rest now, Reverend Mitchell. I remember when he called. And they were telling me, said, there's a church that they're without a pastor. They want to know, they're trying to get some pastors to come and fill in. And I was going simply to help out on some of the Sundays.
Right.
While they
like
were in
in
the
rotation.
process.
Okay.
Right. Kind of like an interim type deal.
Yeah.
And well, I won't even say it was interim. Rotation. We'll stay there. And so when they had me to come in, it was they were meeting every other Sunday. And the funny part about it was I worked every other Sunday. Across the rotation, I was doing rotating shifts. So we were literally working every other weekend.
Okay.
And so my rotation fell right in line with
your
their
work
schedule.
Okay.
And so they asked me, like, you mind, come on down. I agreed. They scheduled me in, went preached the first time, and didn't know how long. They said maybe we'll start out with maybe a month. So I'm figuring 2 Sundays in a month. Okay. So preached the first time. They asked me to come back the second time. I did. Church had went through a lot. Even coming in as a visitor, you could kind of see some of the needs and things that needed to be in place.
Absolutely.
Conversation about some of the stuff, and I'm like, listen, I'm just
here in rotation.
Visiting, right. But if it's something we can help out with, let me know.
Yeah.
Well, little did I know that from those 2 Sundays that I was there, I hadn't applied. Did not apply for the church. I'm just coming to preach.
So they let you know you had applied.
Right. So they had a meeting that I didn't know anything about. That meeting turned into a lot of them saying how they really wanted me to come and be the pastor. They felt that I was going to be the one. And I didn't know that at that time.
Right.
So they asked for me to attend a meeting. Some of them had some questions.
Okay.
Because, it's a marriage. You're both trying to get to know each other and all. And there were some questions about my resume and all that some would like to see it. Okay, so I had to get it together. I wasn't even prepared because it's not like I'm submitting.
Exactly. Exactly. Like,
so I was like, I'll get it together.
I wasn't here for this.
Right.
Like, one moment, please.
Right. So submitted it, and from that point, they were able to bring me in for the meeting. I made it available. I think maybe 2 people looked at it, and one of the ladies kind of cut the meeting short, and she said, only thing I want to know is, do you could you possibly see yourself as being our pastor? And I was just like, whoa, you know, I'm not even thinking about pastoring because here I am, and from my perspective.
Right.
And once again, you know, many are the plans.
Yes. Yes.
I'm not even thinking I would be able to handle pastoring while working full time, still in law enforcement. I'm like, I still have several years to go before I can even, felt like I needed to retire to be able to fulfill my obligation and commitment to be able to do that.
Okay.
Everything fell into place as far as schedule and all of that. I was like, and I was really like, I guess at this point, you know, I'm like, I need some time to pray on this thing.
That's how, because that was my thoughts. Being a minister, and then all of a sudden somebody's like, submit your resume to be a pastor. I'll be like, no, thank you.
Well, I think that there was a part of me that's out of my concern and care for people.
Okay.
Made me capable of pastoring.
Okay.
And all my life I was a servant. So I think in that aspect, you know, I'm serving the public. So I can see, once again, it took a lot of conversation and trying to figure out how that was going to come together. I can say that in spite of my own thoughts and beliefs, God always made it so that it would work and that it fit.
Okay.
And he'd be like, hey, understand, I'm giving you some direction. I'm going to order your steps in this one. Because every time that, and it amazed me so much because when I look at it, how there were times when I didn't know how it was going to work out, how the piece of the puzzle, and then something would happen, even whether if it was career-wise or whatever, where he even would shift and position things to where it was always able to go forth.
Yes, yes.
And it never fell short.
Absolutely.
And that was, I mean, even to the point, and I'll even talk about when I went to go work down the road. When everything was haywire, you know, so that, there was so many things that was revealed when you talk about his providence and how my goal was to get to retirement. And there was relationships and connections that were made even before. And the things that I saw during that time, I believe that God allowed me to go through some stuff to show me even some individuals in the situation. I'm not going to call names.
No, we won't do that.
But there was things where even to watch the connection between policing, politics, and the pulpit. And watching how
almost sounds like a book title.
Hey, who knows?
Hey.
There's some inspiration.
Right,
and look, there's a story to tell.
Right.
But when you look at how politics has played a factor in both,
Absolutely.
you know, from the community to the church.
Yes.
And even seeing how individuals that are, I'll say, religious,
Okay.
can get caught up in the politics aspect.
Okay.
And seeing how all of that just worked and just, oh my God.
And it sounds like it often could or possibly trump the heart of what should really be happening.
It does.
Because of the dynamics and the tug of war in these areas.
Because it really goes back to motives. It does.
Yeah.
It really goes back to your motives and why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Okay. And who's gonna benefit from it in the end? But we'll leave that.
Okay.
We'll leave that. So we've talked about you both being in law enforcement and then now in ministry and pastoring and also being a business owner. So when you hear the words purpose and or passion, how would you define those and what do they mean to you? Like if someone says, Derrick, what is your purpose and or what is your passion? How do you respond to those?
I feel that it's a lot of times when properly applied, your passion should push you on into purpose.
Okay. Okay.
It should be a driving force. Whatever it is that you're passionate about, I think the purpose is going to be very closely linked and connected to that.
Okay.
For me, I've always had a passion and a desire to not just to be available and help in some way, form, or fashion.
Right.
You want to be useful. You want to be able to be beneficial to others and be able to pour something into them and be able to give them something that they're going to be able to carry on from there as well. And I think that even from the business aspect, that allows me to do that as well.
Right. Okay.
There was a lot of times, and this is where it really gets for me. I've never been a person that's been driven by money, which I think is one of the reasons why the church where I'm located, when there's a house that's designed for every pastor.
The parsonage, or if they still call it that these days.
Well, just to know that where you are called to, it's going to be by design and by purpose. So I went into a profession where you don't really get paid a lot because my passion was that I really wanted to help people.
Right. Right.
I ended up going to a church. It wasn't like the biggest church. It might not have been the richest. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But my motivation was never the money, but it doesn't change the fact that there was a need that needed to be fulfilled in that house.
Absolutely.
So I've always been the type of person to, if I can go and benefit and do, the blessing will come from that.
Yeah.
You know, it's not nothing that needs to be, that's a whole nother conversation.
Okay. Look, we'll have a part 2 or a sidebar. However we need to have the extra conversation.
That is, yeah. We'll be here all night on that.
Yeah. So look, we'll save it. You mentioned God's providence, and I'm glad you did, because that's the whole theme of this segment. Is become one of my life's mantra. It started as a book title, and you probably don't see it far from me these days, because I've seen God just do some amazing things that I often say, if I took a pen and tried to write a story, I couldn't write it as great as he did it. And many of us, I believe, experience those moments. It's just us being able to recognize them and then know, oh, yeah, God, this was all you and not me. Right. So can you give us a specific moment that you've seen God orchestrate in your life? Be it, like you said, right relationship, right time, paths crossed with the right person, right opportunity, and it was really nothing that you could have done to make it happen the way it did.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that's, I feel like that's almost my entire life.
I understand that too.
In the highest moments and even in the lowest moments, I could still see it.
Okay.
I'll go to one of the lowest, especially with my wife, when she passed from colon cancer.
Okay.
At the age of 29.
Oh, wow. Right.
Who would,
probably very unheard of around that time.
It was.
Yeah.
And the thing about it was, especially for it to be colon cancer, even the oncologist that was treating her at the time, he was like, this is uncommon. But even in the midst of her going through the illness and me not knowing how we were going to make ends meet, you know, I'm thinking about the fact of going and being a single father. He continued, I mean, for when it came to the point of even once she passed. And now I'm trying to focus on the burial. Didn't have to pay a penny.
Wow.
And it was like right there in that moment.
Yeah.
I was like, I know you
Yeah.
don't understand what's going on right now, but understand I got you.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of people that stepped up, you know, because there was a lot of people even within my job and there at the sheriff's office at the time that knew what was going on. That stepped up and they offered help. And it was just like, you know, hey, I'm going to show you
How I can surround you.
Listen,
Yeah.
I'm going to let you see Jehovah Jireh right
Yes.
now. I'm going to show you this.
Yes.
And little did I know it was things that was happening even in my lowest moment that he was actually teaching me, grooming me, preparing me. And it's just like, I'm going to put you here so that you'll be able to witness it for yourself. So that I wasn't even thinking about ministry, but then now it gives me a whole new
Yeah.
understanding and meaning when you've experienced some things and you've gone through some stuff.
Yeah. When you've seen his hand in different facets,
Oh my goodness.
it strengthens the foundation from which you declare the word from. Absolutely. So I will ask you to give some words of encouragement in a moment. And I think I would like for you to speak from a place of anyone having difficulty trusting God. It could be another male who's experienced the loss of their spouse and having difficulty dealing with that transition and what life looks like now and how do I continue moving forward. Or it could be someone struggling with answering the call. You know, they've heard it. So whatever is on your heart to share, I'll have you do that in a moment. Okay. But when my staple question that everybody has to answer, or I ask everyone to answer, that I don't prep them for, is because I love music, I like to ask people if you had to name a song that defines this season of your life. What song would you say defines this season of your life?
Wow. For a while it was Moving On.
Which version of Moving On?
With Molly music.
Oh, okay, yes. I mean, that was kind of what came in my head, but I'm like, is there a quartet version of Moving On?
No. Oh, you think I'm on the quartet?
I'm just saying. Yeah, okay, Molly. I like that version. I like that song.
Yeah. That was one of them. Only
Okay.
because, you know, there's some things that you do have to leave behind. This was, and of course, talking about marriages and all that, I recently went through divorce and all of that as well. So that was a song that was really heavy for me for a while.
Okay.
Because in that season.
Right, absolutely.
Now, I don't know. I'm just, you can give me a good worship song, anything. I'm good for it. I don't know if it's just one.
Okay.
That's
I
difficult.
get that. Like, mine would probably change day by day, possibly even hour by hour. So is there something that's getting a lot of playtime from you right now? Something you've had on repeat lately?
I can't say it's just one particular song.
Okay.
It just depends on the mood. I'm
mood.
in.
Okay. So we'll take the Molly song. That's been a first. We've had one song be a repeat offender in here a few times, but okay. I like the Molly music song. Was it difficult divorcing as a pastor?
Very.
Okay.
Extremely. For many different reasons.
I can imagine.
First thing that came up was, what are people going to say? Mm-hmm. In the human side of it. Mm-hmm. There's going to be the ones in the judgment seat. There's going to be individuals that will not know, not understand. And one thing that I always vowed that I would never do is badmouth her.
Absolutely.
Nobody gets anything out of that.
Absolutely.
Now, it may not be reciprocated. Hey, it is what it is.
You can only do your part.
I'm going to do my part. Exactly.
Right.
And the other part of it is always try to never let anyone dictate who you are.
That's good. That's good. Yeah.
So, in spite of if someone does choose to try to do that or bash you or whatever,
Absolutely.
it's going to be my job to not prove it.
Right. Right.
I'm not going to get an attitude and then start validating
What they're
that.
saying.
Right.
Yeah.
So then the other part of that is you have to be secure enough in yourself to know who you are, so that no matter what anyone says is going to impact or change, even tap into your character. You have to maintain that.
Yeah.
The biggest part that was hardest for me, and which even motivated me to try to work through it, was how could I ever counsel? How could I ever try to help somebody if I didn't try myself?
Right. Right.
That was one of the, so I was like, I tried to navigate that the best that I could in that side of it. There was a couple pastors that I talked with along the way through there, and it was a difficult decision. But
Absolutely. Okay.
the ending was the ending.
Understood. Understood. So, being both widowed and divorced, what's your view on love and marriage now? Especially, being widowed and divorced and being a pastor.
Okay. I've always said, and it's funny, I remember when I want to say it was the day of the court hearing. I remember putting a post on Facebook saying that I still believed in the institution of marriage. I know that it is possible. And truth be told, my first marriage
Right.
was, I have experienced it to where I know it can work.
Yeah.
Literally to death did us part.
Yes.
And that was the only reason.
Absolutely.
So I know it's possible. I know it's possible.
You know it's possible.
So I still believe in it.
Absolutely.
I do know that it's possible, and
we can leave it
still
there.
optimistic.
You can leave it there.
Thank you.
I think you've said enough to say, you've had it in a healthy way.
I have.
And you've had it in a God ordained way to death do you part, and you still believe in the possibilities of what God can do in that union. So, all right. So, anything that is on your heart to share, like I said earlier, with someone maybe having difficulty trusting God through a transition of any sorts, or we'll deal with it that way, because the transition of the loss of your wife, the transition from one profession into another, that can be opposite ends of the spectrum in many ways.
Right.
But because of what you're called to do, you had to continue moving on with the little Mally bump to it. So if you don't mind looking in this camera and just sharing what's on your heart to those that would be listening, to encourage them in that process of transition.
Gotcha. First thing is understand that everything that you go through comes from a place of purpose. It helps get you over to that point for what it is that God wants you to do. I'm just so inspired by the fact that even when I look back over my personal life, how there's been things that I have tried to accomplish. There's been failures, there have been accomplishments, there's been achievements, and there's been all kind of things that have worked in my favor. And there's been, seems like you're taking one step forward, 3 steps back. But even in the midst of whether you're going forward or backwards, I've always seen how God has continued to keep me even through it all, how he's always, and when I say always, brought me out better than what I was before.
Yes.
So there was you want to mention a song that really holds dear and near, is Hold On to God's Unchanging Hand.
Yes.
Old school with
Yes.
it, Hey. But the truth behind that, I've never had anyone else that has ever been an ever-present help in the way that God has in each of those situations. Career-wise, there's been jobs that it's going good today, might go bad tomorrow, but yet even in those jobs where things didn't go well, there was knowledge, wisdom, experience that you can carry on into the next and apply it and use it to do better even in those areas. So
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Look, I ain't have a keyboard to tune up for you over here, so I didn't know how much you was going to get into it.
No.
But again, I really appreciate you saying yes, and I was laughing a little bit because my cameraman got into my videographer got onto me last week because I was hitting the table and I noticed you were doing the same thing.
I'm sorry.
Look, we both were talking with our hands, so we're sorry if y'all hear some bumping in the mics because I did get the warning last week. We did not warn DP, so we both been tapping on the table.
You know, you got to warn the preacher.
I know. Listen. But thank you again, Derrick, for saying yes. This has been really, really good. You shared some amazing things that inspired and encouraged me. So I know that those that are listening will also feel that same inspiration and encouragement for their journey. And I greatly, greatly appreciate you making the sacrifice to show up. And to those that are watching, thank you for your continued support. Please connect with us on all of our social media platforms. That information will be on the screen. And as I say every week, have you subscribed to the YouTube channel? If not, pause the video, go subscribe, and then you can come back and watch till the end. But I'm grateful that you continue to show up, not only for me, because these episodes are not about me, but you show up to hear the goodness of God and how he moves in the lives of some amazing people here in the upstate of South Carolina with these segments I'm doing in person. And I appreciate you showing up to celebrate their stories with me. So until next time.